Greetings and salutations, viewers. Welcome to a new episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with That Old Time Religion, which looks like a very fun little noir story. Don't really know what the plot is, other than it looks very noir, it has a fun soundtrack. Hey, how about we dive right in? Oh yeah, it has tips. Tips 1 of 6. The story is set to automatically progress to the next page after a few seconds. You can adjust the text speed in the preferences to speed up this or slow it down. Clicking the auto tag in the menu on the upper right will disable auto forward mode. You can return to a previously read section by using the mouse wheel to scroll up backwards through the story. This can even allow you to choose a different path. Well, I am using a trackpad, so that point is moot. You can left-click, hit space, or enter to move through the story. On a touch-enabled device, you simply need to touch the screen to move to the next section. Or I'll hit the trackpad. Menu item labeled preferences to set your preferences, like sound and music volume. You can save the progress and do all sorts of fun stuff, or you can check the readme file, which everyone always reads the readme files. I mean, really. Play the story. Episode 1. A priest, a rabbi, and a hound walked through the door. No, it wasn't the start of a joke. I really wish it was. It was, instead, the start of a couple of really bad days. Mr. Harvey Jenkins, yes? That was the priest, a small portly man in the usual black slacks and shirt, with that white square for a collar that's the usual dead giveaway. He looked as nervous as a rep at a coyote convention, eyeing me with his... Let's turn off auto so I can get through it. Eyeing me in much of the decor of my ramshackle office with barely concealed discomfort. I couldn't really blame him. It looked like 100 miles of bad road on the best of days. My last 3 cleaning ladies all quit after less than a week each on the job. And there are things in my office even I don't like to look at if I can help it. The rabbi was less nervous by far. In fact, he looked entirely amused. You certainly fit the descriptions I've been given, Mr. Jenkins. To the T, I might add. I instantly liked this guy. He was burly, but I had the build of someone who'd worked hard most of his life, and knew how the world worked. He just had a way of putting folks at ease, which was probably a good thing if you're going to be a Jew in the Deep South. Mama Bonte, she don't lie. I told you she knew this man. She know him, and she know he be the right one for us to call on. Oh, I can see we're gonna have all sorts of fun with horrible accents. The Howland was wearing a rather dapper grey suit with a matching fedora, though it was clear he didn't need it for his lean, athletic frame. He had a fine black cane with a silver head of some kind of lizard on it. With eyes almost as black as his skin, he studied me hard, and I shifted under his gaze. Something I can do for you, gentlemen, or are you here to take turns trying to save my sorry soul? Each of the men chuckled at that, even the priest, though the howman never took his eyes off me. The other 2 seemed to be waiting on him, so the room got quiet as we all looked at him. Finally, he grunted with some semblance of satisfaction. Yeah, he'd the one. He'd been touched by something, and it marked him, but he got a strong soul and a good heart, so he'd the one. Gentlemen, I'm sure this all means something to you, but the only reason I've not been inclined to toss you collectively out on your keisters is because I don't tend to like to get on the wrong side of the clergy. The lizard cane here had the good sense to mention Mama Bonte, who I owe a couple of favors to. Still, You're cutting into some prime drinking time here. So, if there's a point... More grins, and the rabbi laughed congenially as he plopped down in the chair right in front of my desk. The Haungen grabbed a stool nearby, and the priest went over and sat gingerly down on the couch I normally used for a bed when I'm too tired or drunk, usually both, to trudge home to my apartment. I figured it best not to tell him how much blood and booze had been soaked in by those cushions. He didn't look like he needed any more reasons to be nervous. I'm Rabbi Kosh, but you can just call me Saul. My esteemed colleagues are Bishop Brian McClarty and Daddy Thunderhand, one of the Haungen Asogs of New Orleans. I was a bit thrown back by the introductions, as I'd heard of all three of these men. Rabbi Saul Kosh was the leader of the largest Jewish temple in the greater New Orleans area, while Bishop Brian McClarty was one of the movers and shakers of the city's Catholic community. As for Daddy Thunderhand, there are a few in New Orleans who didn't know of the man who could make it rain, and call his faithful to war, if he so chose. Most of the police department was on orders to just leave him alone, unless they directly witnessed him murdering someone. And probably even then, try and find a way to get around it. Just what were three of the most powerful religious leaders of New Orleans and the surrounding parishes doing in my humble office? Well, it wouldn't be a story without some sort of setup, so I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like the answer. And I hate being right about such things. Harvey. May I call you Harvey? Is he a gigantic invisible rabbit, otherwise known as a puka? Because otherwise, why would you call him Harvey? That's silly. I nodded at the disarming rabbi. What we have here is a very difficult situation. One that promises to make a lot of trouble for a lot of good people if we don't take action. You see, there's a reason three gents like us can get along well enough to come see you all at once like this. Heck, we even get together and play cards over good wine and nosh, talk theology without coming to blows, and genuinely like each other. Saul beamed at both of the others, who smiled affably enough back at him to let me know he wasn't just throwing a line. Thing is, it wasn't always like this. You gotta expect that religious divides can be hard to overcome, and they can make for some ugly relations for the folks who believe so differently. Poor Brian's predecessors were constantly having to beat their parishioners over the head and shoulders with the New Testament, trying to keep them from heading over to the voodoo parts of the city and setting fires. Which would have been a bad move, since that means Daddy's folks would have fought back with God knows what, and turned the whole city into an abattoir. Naturally, my people would have just been crushed in the crossfire, them as didn't side with the Catholics in the first place. Do you know why none of this has come to pass, Harvey? Too much good wine? Why we haven't had nasty little religious wars in one of the most vulnerable cities in this part of the world? I'd have to say, Saul, that I haven't given it much thought. I guess maybe I should have, but I shrugged and took another sip of bourbon, or in my case, little fudge chips. I almost offered Bishop McClarty a swig, as he looked like he needed it. Instead, I passed the bottle to Daddy Thunderhand who smiled and accepted. Then the bishop spoke up. Mr. Jenkins, it is well that you don't concern yourself with such matters normally. That is, in fact, a testament to the man we've come to ask your help in finding. He is the reason our communities are at peace with each other, and why we are even able to come together in times of crisis and work as a single community when the need arises. Daddy Thunderhand chimed in. Surely you notice there'd be one man missing here, yeah? Alright, so we got a rabbi, Catholic priest, and voodoo, whatever. Protestant of some sort. If we're gonna go all out, let's say Baptist. There ought to be a Baptist here. I'd guess that would be the good Reverend Kellerman. They all smiled at that, and Bishop Brian went on, actually seeming to relax a bit as he did. Indeed, Mr. Jenkins, it would seem our collective hopes that you would be quick on the uptake are well founded. Reverend Paul Kellerman is the man most responsible for the relative harmony New Orleans enjoys from its spiritual communities. He preaches a message that is big on love thy neighbor, and judge not, lest ye be judged, and he does so with great charisma and leadership. In short, Saul butted in, he's kept the peace among us for over 20 years. Now, he's missing, and we're all more than a little worried, because it's pretty clear there's been foul play, and we think it's way beyond the ability of the police to handle. They ain't got nobody who can handle the powers we think be at work here. So you're coming to a private eye, which, you know, can do some things the police can't, fair enough. But, The whole city's starting to go dark already, with demons and shadows playing on the edges like they're waiting for something to start. Is it a tea party? The Houngan said all of this as though it were perfectly normal, and not at all like something out of a cheap pulp novel. Or even a visual novel. The trouble was, I knew he was only too right about what really lived in the shadows. I'd already been chewed up and spit out by a few ugly beasts from beyond in my times here. That was, in fact, part of why I owed Mama Bonte a couple of favors. So, you gentlemen want to hire me to find Reverend Kellerman. And when I say hire, I hope you realize that a good heart and owing Mama Bonte favors doesn't help pay the rent on this office, or put more bourbon on the shelf. So, another hearty laugh from Saul brought a return grin from me. Not to worry, Harvey. We'll be paying you top rates, plus expenses, and a bonus you can take a vacation with if you find Paul. There's plenty of wealthy and powerful folks who support our cause to keep the peace in New Orleans, so the funds are there. In fact, he reached in his pocket, pulled out a check, and slid it across the desk at me. That's when I knew I was in trouble. It was the biggest retainer check I'd ever received. The three gentlemen pointed me in 3 different directions, after which they left to tend to their flocks and see what they could do about the supernatural threats they each perceived. Oh, they are actually giving me options. Hold on. I have something for that. A handy dandy notebook. Alright, so if McClarty wants me to go to the crime scene, Bishop McClarty encouraged me to start with the crime scene of the crime itself, which was Reverend Kellerman's office at the St. Charles Avenue Baptist Church, one of the oldest churches in the city. He told me to look up the church secretary, a Miss Mary Carmichael. So he disappeared in his own office. That's disconcerting, to say the least. Saul thought I should go and see the Reverend's daughter. Alright. I mean, yes, the last person to see him. He seemed pretty adamant about it, and he warned me that she was already being guarded by the police against possible kidnapping. So, some game mechanics would secretly imply that there's a time mechanic here, and I should probably start going towards the daughter first before she gets kidnapped. That could be a red herring, though, because if I deal with that, I could lose a clue somewhere else along the way. But it's all dependent on how intricate this particular game is in regards to the mechanics. And then, Daddy Thunderhand recommended I look into the dealings of one Gospel Devino, aka Brother Gospel Divine. Competition? Maybe. A newcomer to the Big Easy. He'd been setting up a huge tent revival out on the edges of the city, preaching about cleaning the sin out of New Orleans. So, depending on how enthusiastic this person is about cleaning up sin, he could see the Reverend as a linchpin in that what they have now isn't good enough. Peace should not be peaceful. They should take down all of the sin. So take down the peacekeeper so everyone goes into chaos and whatnot. Huh. The other two weren't so sure, but the Haugen seemed convinced the coming troubles were somehow linked to him. Fair enough. Naturally, I also figured on a fourth path. The one that always did me some good when things got weird and potentially dangerous. The streets of Nola are full of wise and sharp-eyed folks. And with the right word here, the right amount of money there, a man can find out almost anything. If he doesn't find a bullet or a knife in his back first. Fair enough. So, we can check out the Reverend's church, which theoretically is the scene of the crime. And we can just wander the streets, see what there is to see, visit the daughter, potentially before she gets kidnapped. Or go check out this Gospel Divine's tent revival site, who may be the main instigator here. Well, I don't want to lose any opportunities, but I don't know what's going to trigger what, or how in-depth this game may be, so, you know what? Let's go our own path. I mean, presumably they've already utilized their sources up until now to try and find him. Either privately or potentially even publicly. They've already talked to the police to some degree in that the daughter is being protected. So logically, their resources have been tapped. Sorry, pollen. So they're just looking for a new perspective on this. I say we just walk the streets, see what goes down. Let's try our own thing. There are plenty of fine, safe places in New Orleans. The kinds of places folks go to have a nice dinner, hear some great music, and enjoy the beauty of the city. Those aren't the kinds of places I go on days like this. Seedy dive bars, old docksides with rotted wood and rotted fish, back alleyways that can get the wrong people robbed or dead. These are the places I wander when I need to get a feel for what's happening in this city. These are the places I haunt like a gray-suited ghost. Fortunately, Rabbi Kosh's check was good, and I had plenty of green to spread where I needed it. I soon figured out a few interesting things. For one, the streets were a lot less crowded with bums in the down and out. Seems like Gospel Divine's revival was offering food, work, and more to anyone who wanted to come out, hear the word, and pitch in. It's a good way to go about it. Desperate folks can find an awful lot of religion in their bones when there's a hot bowl of soup and a couple of dollars in it for them. What disturbed me more by far were the tales of very large men in black suits, black shirts with no ties, and strange brands on their forehead. Are they Goa'uld? Because, if we're going to Stargate on this, I'm all in. Apparently, they never spoke, instead just standing around and watching other folks intently. From what I could put together, they seemed mostly focused on folks who had gone to see Gospel Divine, but didn't sign on to his cause or donate any money. When the local constables got around to asking some of these guerrillas about their business, apparently the only thing they said was, "We are here to bear witness." To what? This was sounding more and more like a confidence game with a shakedown element. I was hoping that's all it was, but a man doesn't easily take a brand on his forehead just to scare money out of folks. I was beginning to think these witnesses were going to be real trouble. Huh. So, okay. So we can go to the church, check out the crime scene, talk to the daughter, drive out to the tent revival site and talk to this Brother Divine, or visit our friend Mama Bonte. Since I apparently owe her favors and she's calling in, let's go say hello and catch up. You got yourself in a mess again, child. Cocoa skin and a smoking silk voice with that Creole spice made my spine tingle every time. Yeah, I'm not doing the accents because I can't. I'm not even going to be able to butcher them with any justice. Mama Bonte and I had something special. Friends with benefits. I'm good to her, she doesn't kill me. There was no point in defining it, or making it more than it was. We simply understood each other, as a part of the city most folks didn't even want to think about, and we helped each other as best we could. There are worse ways to conduct a relationship. I think I can blame you a bit for this one, sweetness. I gave her a challenging look. She just laughed. Fair enough, Mr. Jenkins, fair enough. You've been tough to kill. Could probably be helpful this time round, too. There be bad mojo at work, no mistake. That gospel divine don't be bringing the Lord to Nawleans. He be bringing the devil, and it's gonna get real ugly real soon. You don't figure out how to deal with them. I don't suppose you have any ideas about that, do you? I really hated dealing with magic and monsters. It just seemed I was somehow linked to them every time I turned around. I was pretty sure I had my grandfather to blame for that. Me and Daddy Thunderhand been looking into it. You get me something I can work with, child. I may be able to help you. What, can you get me a hound? Because, that might help. Man like Gospel, he got to be messing with powers he don't quite understand. That usually means talismans and such. Get me something like that. I think I can work up a way to handle things. Maybe. Not the biggest fan of maybes, but alright, more clues. Alright, so we've done our side of things, checking out the streets and checking up on Mama Bonte. Let's just see what we're up against. I made my way out past the city limits, where some farmer had given up a huge part of his fields for the circus that Gospel Divino had brought in. A huge, colorful sign hung over the whole mess, reading, "The Gospel Divine, Revelations and Redemption Revival. All sinners welcome." It was nice to feel like I was invited. Dozens, maybe even hundreds of folks who were busy with any number of tasks, or milling about and talking with each other like they were at a church social, which, I suppose, was pretty much the case. There was one huge big top-style tent in the middle of the gathering, with smaller tents, trailers, and temporary buildings sprung up like mushrooms in a cow pasture. That was apropos, since we were actually in a cow pasture to start with. Yeah, fair enough. The two things that caught my attention right away. The first was how the big tent was clearly being guarded at all entrances, and it looked like only a very select few were allowed in or out. Folks dressed far better than the average hanger-on seemed like they had some kind of authority or special role in things. Anyone else who got too curious about what was beyond the flaps was rather forcefully pushed back by the guards. That was the other thing that got my attention. The guards. All of them were huge men, dressed in black suits with black shirts. No ties. They all had an X branded on their foreheads. That is odd. Oh, I think we got someone's attention. Greetings, pilgrim. I'm Brother James. Have you come to wash away your sins and become a part of our movement? I tried to smile, though the look of the guards weighed heavily on me. His slightly smarmy nature didn't actually do a lot for my disposition either. Brother James, while I appreciate your concern for my soul, I doubt you've got enough water or wine out here to wash away all of my sins. Actually, I'm here to see if I can talk to Mr. Gospel Devino. Brother James's expression didn't change one iota, his smile still perfectly planted on his face. Nonetheless, I got the distinct impression that he'd already decided he didn't like me. That was fine. Most people don't like me when they first meet me. People tend to like me even less after they get to know me. Many wish to see the blessed wisdom of Brother Gospel Divine, sir. He tries to reach out to all, but I am sure you can understand he is a very busy, very involved man. He will preach tonight, as always. If you join us for the nightly service, I am certain his words of inspirational guidance will reach you, brother. It was clear Brother James was fishing for my name, though I had no inclination to add him to my family tree as a brother. I obliged him. After all, it's the polite thing to do when you're snooping into a man's business. Jenkins. Harvey Jenkins. I produced my credentials. Private investigator. This time, Brother James's expression did change. The smile slightly faded, and he was clearly moving into a defensive frame of mind. They all do when they see the badge. I am quite certain, Mr. Jenkins, that I have no idea what this is about, but I can assure you we have all the necessary permits and licenses. While a number of folks have claimed some concern for family members who have joined us, no one is here unless they wish to be. There are a few esteemed members of law enforcement and local government even, who are among our ranks. There are no irregularities for you to investigate. He said that last word with a certain amount of disdain, like most people say the word fornicate. I put on my pleasant, patient face. It doesn't look too different from my usual face, except that it makes me look a little less like I'm about to punch or shoot you. James, I'm sure all that is fine. I'd just like to ask the good Brother Divine a couple of questions. Regarding... This didn't come from persnickety Brother James, but from a golden, powerful voice behind him. We both turned to see a man in a pure white suit with a white shirt and white tie. He had on a white fedora and carried a silver cane with a golden cross on top. He was flanked by two of those huge branded men, with a lovely scarlet-haired lady carrying a notebook next to him. Her black skirt was hip-hugging and just barely decent in length. Barely. He strode up confidently, and every single pair of eyes in the area was on him. Looks of adoration came from most, save a few who spared me looks of far less than that. He seemed incapable of getting any mud or muck on his pristine suit. I'd have paid good money for that ability. Brother James leapt into explanation. Brother Divine, you've no need to concern yourself with this matter, I assure you. This is just another one of those PIs some non-believer has hired to try and convince a loved one to abandon our cause. Gospel Divine wasn't a large man, in fact. He was a bit on the short side, and skinny to boot. Yet his presence was formidable. So handsome he was practically pretty, and oozing charisma out of every pore. If I hadn't already faced down things from the pit of hell a few times, I might have actually been impressed. He appraised me carefully as he spoke. Is that true, sir? You're here to try and convince a member of my flock to leave us? I looked him straight in the eyes. I got the impression he wasn't used to that. Couldn't tell if he liked or hated it. No, sir, nothing like that. I'm just here to ask you a few questions about the disappearance of Reverend Paul Kellerman. There. So often it comes down to just saying the right thing at the right time. If you know what to watch for. And any PI who wants to make a living at that figures it out. Comes down to the reaction to your words in that one moment. Divine was good, I had to give him that. Nothing. Not a twitch, not a tell of any kind. Might as well have said I just came for a cheeseburger and some fries, took a wrong turn for all the reaction I got in the moment. No, it was Brother James and the redhead who gave it away. She focused just a little too intently on her notebook, and James's eyes narrowed just for an instant before he caught himself. Just like a really intense game of poker between two sharks, Gospel Divine and I both knew what had happened. I had him, and he knew it. He was a pro, though, and the game still had to play out. Yes, I'd heard about that poor man being kidnapped the other night. He and I might not see eye to eye on matters of the spirit, Mr. Jenkins, but I still consider any harm brought to a brother in Christ to be a terrible tragedy. If you are looking into his disappearance, I am grateful. I am, however, unclear on how I might be of help here. Time to play my trump. Well, sir, considering you and his daughter have some kind of relationship, I was rather hoping you might have had some dealing with the Kellermans lately and could help me get a sense who might have had it in for him. Okay, so I'm stepping back from this. If that's his trump card, and if we were to have gone and checked out Kellerman's daughter and learned that they were having a fling, fair enough. That would be a good trump card. But seeing as we haven't done that yet, if that is how this is supposed to play out, that is, as a gamer, kind of frustrating. Because I, as a player, should not know that information. This PI, as a character, should not know that information yet. Because we did not go down that path. Which implies that this is one of those very linear storylines where if you go in the proper order of which ones you're supposed to go to, you will get the full storyline and everything will sync up the way it's supposed to. But if you step out of line, you get that. And that just throws me off. Miss Rachel Kellerman. Yes. She and I have had a correspondence, though I consider it to be of a private nature. I will reveal to you that she and I have a certain level of agreement where her father's overly tolerant nature is concerned. I've been hoping to meet her in person while here, but we've not managed that just yet. I'm sorry, but if that's all, I'm afraid I have a service to prepare for. Realizing that I'd gotten what I'd come for, I decided it might be time for a tactical withdrawal. After all, I really don't like how those giants with the branded foreheads were looking at me. Honestly, Mr. Deverneau. Please, Mr. Jenkins, call me Divine. Fat chance. Sir, I just felt like such a large congregation of spiritual folks might have had some helpful information. I can see you're very busy, so I'll let you get back to your work. I handed the redhead my card. I was pretty sure no one ever handed Gospel Divine anything directly. If you do come across any information, I will be grateful to hear from you. I turned to go at that, figuring this part of the game was over. Not quite. Mr. Jenkins. His voice rang like a bell, and I couldn't help but stop in my tracks and turn to face him again. He strode very purposefully towards me, and I was shocked to see that even his bodyguards held back. Brother James was already on his way to instruct others in one task or another, and though it was clear that their leader had one more thing to say to me, most folks seemed inclined to stay out of business that didn't concern them. The glares of the bodyguards seemed to help in that. Devino caught up to me, and he stood close enough to speak at a near whisper. You've been touched, Mr. Jenkins. Touched by shadows, by darkness. We both know it. He looked at me intently, obviously expecting some kind of response. I didn't oblige him, but he went on. My ministry could use one with your gifts and your experience, sir. I promise you the rewards would be most fulfilling. I can also promise you that anything that interferes with the ministry runs the very real risk of facing terrible wrath. God's will must be done, Mr. Jenkins. It must be done. And we're going to pause things for there and see just how everything plays out next episode. And I may just off-screen go back and try out the other options to see how all that plays out, if maybe this will work out all in all, or if maybe this particular setup really encouraged you to go down a particular combination rather than jumping around. Tune in for episode 2 of That Old Time Religion, and we will find out. But until then, go play some video games, go experience some stories, go create some stories of your own and share them with others. And of course, go hit that subscribe button, check out some of the other Game Break series we have going, like BioShock Infinite. And we have a lot of fun shenanigans in the works that we hope to come out over the next few months. So stay tuned, and until next time, go be creative.